The ubiquitous British village church, scattered mainly around rural England, and denoted by their general small size and congregations relative to the communities which they serve. It is in these rural temples of Christian veneration, by sheer virtue of their design, surroundings, and well-developed tree-lined exteriors, that they have formed the backdrop for numerous horror tales and ghost stories, both in literature and in cinema. Their overall aesthetic lends themselves to the classic Gothic visionscape, both in terms of their architecture and the nature of their immediate environment. However, there is also something greater than the sum of their atmospheric visual parts contained within the fabric and energy of many of these buildings. They are also time capsules, repositories of experiences and events which often stretch far off into the ancient antiquity and beyond. They not only hold secrets, but also literally contain them. Memories of a pagan and a pre-pagan past, concealed beneath ecclesiastical infrastructure, as well as within ancient, half-forgotten place names. The concept of one of these rural English churches being something of a sealed doorway to dark secrets and ancient archaic rites forms the central theme of Elliot Goldner's 2013 movie The Borderlands, which was released in the United States under the title of Final Prayer. The movie is of the found footage horror film genre and surrounds the investigation by a Vatican paranormal, miracle and research team of reported and video recorded events within one such English village church. The movie is not only the best example of a found footage horror film since the Blair Witch Project, it is also one of the most disturbing and genuinely terrifying horror films ever made. The Borderlands has also become something of a benchmark movie within the folk horror revival movement, not only due to its plot and atmospheric backdrop, but also in that the storyline seems somewhat plausible, that these rural churchyards which scare countless children are feared for a primal but also perhaps genuine reason, that their past is not so much recorded within them, but in fact is imprisoned and hidden away. The film's three main characters are Deacon, a skeptical, somewhat tormented Scottish religious brother, driven by a need to debunk reported miracles in the Catholic Church; an individual named Gray, who is a secular technical consultant hired to work on documenting the investigation, as well as, interestingly, the only English member of the team and the most open to belief in the paranormal; and of Father Mark Amadon, a dour, career-focused Irish priest working directly for the Vatican to oversee the investigation into reports of supernatural activity in the recently reopened church, which had been originally built in 1260 and had not seen any Catholic mass services since the 1880s. Upon their initial visit to the church, after the classic encounter with a suspicious local, the parish priest, a Father Krellick, announces that a miracle has taken place during the first Christian baptism held in the reopened church. Father Krellick presents Deacon and Gray with video images of objects on the altar mysteriously moving, while an intense low-frequency rumbling noise is present. Deacon is deeply suspicious and believes that Father Krellick has staged the events in order to drum up mass attendances at the failing church. The following day, Father Mark joins the investigation, and while exploring the interior, of the church discovers a hidden side panel disguised as a bookcase and is attacked by an unseen mysterious presence before he can actually explore a secret area he's discovered further below and beyond the door. Using Gray's equipment, he records the sound of the low-frequency hum, voices muttering, and a baby which appears to be crying. While this is going on, Father Mark follows the increasingly depressed Father Krellick to the roof of the church tower, who is now in a clearly unhinged state. Krellick mutters to Father Mark about what he has witnessed, and then Father Krellick leaps to his death, horrifying the research team. Although he is not a Catholic, Gray appears the most upset and disturbed by Father Krellick's suicide. This changes the nature of his character, as before the suicide event, Gray was a jokey, almost shallow personality. For the remainder of the movie, he demonstrates that he is far more intellectual than he lets on, and to some degree, even more spiritual than the two Catholic clergy team members he is working with. We also discover that Deacon was connected to an ayahuasca ceremony, which resulted in the deaths of several priests, and this is the reason why Father Mark also has grievances with Deacon. With the death of Father Krellick, the village locals go from being rude to openly hostile towards the investigators. Local thugs sadistically burn a sheep alive outside the rented cottage they are staying at, demonstrating that the increasingly dark nature of the church and its paranormal events appears to be affecting the local population. During one superb scene in the village pub, Deacon and Gray have a conversation surrounding the tangibility of pagan worship compared to that of an invisible Christian God. Listening in on this conversation, it affects the locals in the pub, and both are ejected. Deacon continues his investigation into the church records and finds references to a previous parish priest having served what is referred to as his new master. There is also talk of a nearby orphanage where children had gone missing during this period. Back at the church, Deacon hears more whispers and the odd noise which leads to the hidden area where Father Mark had his previous encounter which knocked him unconscious. The doorway is inscribed with a sigil which is also noted in the church records by a previous priest when it closed to regular masses in the 1880s. Behind this door, a set of stone steps leading down into darkness where the sounds of a baby crying and Krellick's ghostly voice is screaming. At this point, Deacon is now begrudgingly accepting that the paranormal events of the church are legitimate, and is doing so to Father Mark's increasing annoyance, who wants to shut down the investigation due to the suicide of Father Krellick damaging perhaps his own career. In response to this, Deacon recruits a Father Calvino, his elderly mentor from the Vatican, who flies in to help with the investigation, but who also, more importantly, is an exorcist, as an attempt to re-sanctify the church and therefore remove any evil spirits which may be present. The elderly Italian priest tells the team that the church was built, like so many, on top of an ancient pagan site. However, beyond it being a ritual site, the pagans feared something below the ground where the church is located. This is also a recurring motif found in the short horror stories of H.P. Lovecraft, that below the Christian world, in stories such as The Haunter in the Dark, an unknown realm in which modern humans cannot possibly come to terms with it exists. Calvino also produces evidence that the church is situated atop a circular enclosed pre-Christian site shown in aerial photographs, and that human sacrifices to an unnamed pagan deity once occurred on the site where the present church stands. That evening the entire team go to the church after Deacon having seen Father Krellick's ghost. The exorcism, which is more akin to a magical ritual than a Christian rite, kicks off intense poltergeist-like activity. The violent forces apparently kill Father Mark, while Father Calvino's eyes begin to stigmata. Both of them then disappear into the darkness. Deacon hears their distant cries from the side door to the hidden staircase. Reluctantly, but driven to go on against their better judgment, Gray and Deacon find themselves inside the vast labyrinth of caves and passages, attempting to find Calvino and Father Mark. Here they stumble upon evidence of child sacrifice and magical inscriptions, only to realise that the last minister in the 1800s had begun worshipping an entity below the church, hence his new master, as he called it. Deacon and Gray find Calvino's ceremonial crucifix while following the sound of Father Mark's cries in the distance. This leads them to crawl through a narrow, organically shaped passageway, and while they are in it, it begins to move. They find themselves in the digestive tract of some gigantic subterranean entity which has lured them all there to feed upon them. The film's horrific conclusion sees the screaming men being digested alive as if they were in the body of a snake, with Deacon reciting the Lord's Prayer. While on the surface the Borderlands can be seen as a story about the evil of paganism and the virtue of Christianity, it goes far deeper than this. The fate of the Catholic ordained and the modern technical layman Gray were unable to resist the pull which the subterranean entity had upon their psyche and consciousness. 2,000 years of Christianity could not contain the terrifying entity below the church or reduce its power. Eventually, human sacrifice was all that could be done to contain it and prevent the entity from rising to the surface. In this regard, the pagans were correct, and the investigation team discovered this to their detriment. This was essentially what Gray was attempting to convey to Deacon during their conversation in the pub, that we need to deal with the tangible gods and demons of nature and the cosmos, and accept them as being real, rather than the invisible God of Christianity. If not, nature and the unseen forces of the cosmos and human consciousness will rise like a subterranean beast from the depths of the earth and do this for us, whether we want it or not. The Borderlands also tells us that Christians built their churches on pagan temples out of fear of the unknown and the mysterious, and not merely the conquest of the heathens.